Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts and the Battleship League. And I am here once again with our resident expert, Drahninifel.
Hello.
Hello. And here is our winner of Division 3, HMS Nelson. Now, for those who watch, or been keeping an eye on Dreadnoughts, you'll know that there's been quite a lot of updates to the game. So this is a reconstruction, and I wanted to get your advice on some of the newer features in 106. So one of them is gun length. Now the game does try and report it. So these are 16-inch 45 guns, which I believe was correct for...
Yeah, that's correct for Nelson.
Yeah, so the 45 refers to the length, and it's basically
it's a multiple of the diameter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that makes sense, but it's kind of a weird... I have had a few people kind of commenting, "Oh, why are you talking about caliber when it's length?" Most people kind of understand that to mean the width, but it's 45 calibers long, I think is the way to think about it, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a 16-inch diameter barrel, and the barrel of the gun is 45 multiplied by 16 inches long.
Mm-hmm. Now these, compared to the real, these values have changed a little bit. I remember when we were doing the league the last time, we had a lot of trouble with the shell weights. I've done some experimenting and got some clarification. The shell that they're referring to is not the actual shell that comes out the barrel of the gun, but the entire kind of package. I think the game models it as an actual, more like a bullet, where, because of course in a naval gun you have the charges are in a bag that you put behind the shell.
Oh, so they're combining the charge weight with the...
Yeah, with the actual shell weight.
Projectile.
Which I think is why we were getting shell weights way in excess of what we would expect for all of them.
I mean, that would make a certain amount of sense, but it's a weird way of modelling it, but fair enough.
Yeah, I know, it is weird, but you can see it here if I change the propellant, it will change the shell weight. Whereas, of course, this propellant isn't actually involved in the actual thing that comes out. It's just pushing it. Yeah. That's why I think we were having trouble with the shell weights. So I don't know how easy it is to figure out how the actual weight of the shell from the total weight of the shell and charge.
That shouldn't be too difficult because the overall charge weights are known.
Okay.
So we can just look those up and add the two together.
Perfect.
And then see what it comes up with. So, for example, with the Nelson class, where have we got? So the propellant charge is approximately 225 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
And then the actual shell itself, the armor-piercing shell, is 929 kilos. So you'd be looking at, 950?
1150.
About 1150 kilos total.
So this is, again, a little bit heavy.
But
that's much closer. That's only a couple of hundred kilograms off, which could be, an extra charge bag that the game's kind of putting in or something.
Something else. Well, you can see from the calibration, there's something is adding 46% to the shell weight.
I think that's probably the shell type. If I change it to a Cat Ballistic 2, it's the shell type. It'd be a combination of the shell type and the propellant and the bursting charge together that's giving you that number. What about velocities? They've changed it a little bit with the update. So we've got 623 on the AP shell and 654 on the HE shell. A little
slow for the Nelsons, because for the
slow.
Nelsons it should be about 790, 788, 790. But then, considering that it's the collective shell weight here is wildly like 200 kilos more, let's not tremendously surprising.
Yeah, so we're going to have to. I think in this division, as we're going through, we're going to have to kind of take a bit of pinch of salt and try and make our best guess. As to the stats, because I know one way you can increase the muzzle velocity in this update is by increasing the length of the gun, which is fair enough. But I thought we should try and keep to the actual historical kind of lengths as much as we can. Although I'm sure we'll find.
To see with the, I think probably the biggest influencing factor looking at it is probably going to be the type of shell for the AP shells. That seems to have quite a radical effect on all sorts of things. So we might have to play around with that and see how much we can deviate from history before we're handicapping ships with unrealistically primitive shells.
Sure. And it's maybe something we'll come back and look at Nelson again once we've had a look at the other ships. I had to do a bit of cheating. I've moved this gun from, I think we had it here, just because I couldn't get it to fit here anymore, even with 100% extra beam. And I've upped them to 5.9 inch. I know they're supposed to be 6, but 6 inch 50s for her secondaries. I think that was about right. Then we've got the 4.7 inch. I made them as, I think I made them 36, but I'm not actually sure what they were supposed to be.
4.7s on the Nelsons are 40 caliber.
Okay, so we can up that a bit. Sometimes the lengths jump around a bit between if you take them off and then place them again. Yeah, I think that's what happened. It just reset it. So there we go. 4.7 40s, and then the they were originally 2-inch guns, but they can be downgraded now. So we now have 1.6 inch guns, which I think is about right for the pom pom. But I'm not sure about the lengths for them.
The pom poms. So,
they're probably small enough that they're not reported in calibers.
Yeah, well, there's a variety of them. The average 2-pounder 40mm is a 39 caliber weapon, which is going to be fun to try and adjust for, but can do that.
Can try and get a 39. That's not updating. Hold on. So you have to take them off. Sometimes the game only lets you have one of them on at a time to change the calibers. There we go. 38. Oops, that's the wrong one. 39, there we go. And we've got 8 of them. I think we did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So, and they've got a new model now. This kind of mount with a kind of shield on it. So the other thing to talk about, apart from guns, is armor, because the game now has a more detailed armor system. One of which is the actual thickness of the barbette armor. Now, I don't know what the Nelsons had. I've just left it at 16, the same as the face, but I'm curious as to how thick the barbettes are.
Up to 15 inches thick.
Okay, 15. That's pretty good. And the other thing they've added is this new layered system of armor. Now, the game gives you 3 inner layers if you go with an all or nothing scheme. You can set these to 0, of course, but I don't know. I've had a look at some books that kind of show the interior layering, and as best I can tell, some ships did have kind of extra kind of splinter protection layers inside the ship, but did ships kind of have thicker belts or inner deck armor plating?
So there was quite a lot of difference in deck armor. So you had the main armor deck, and then different ships could have different combinations of protection. So it depends where it's positioning these decks, but some ships would have what were variously called bomb decks or burster decks or whatever, which would be thinner layers of armor on decks above the main armor belt. It could be a deck higher or 2 decks higher, and the idea, as the name suggests, was to initiate the fuses of incoming bombs and potentially also initiate the fuses of incoming shells. It was never designed to actually stop them. It was basically just to get those projectiles either get the fuses running, or if it was talking about HE shells or general purpose high explosive bombs, might even actually start breaking them up, which makes the main armor deck's job a lot easier. And then more common, because obviously you only really design that kind of per layer of armoring when you think that bombs and high angle shells are an issue. So for the league we're coming to, where we're talking about mostly treaty era ships, that is actually applicable. But then also a number of ships would have an armor deck below the main armor deck. And again, its purpose wasn't to stop any projectile, because, you know, if you've got 5 or 6 inches of armor and something's just smashed clean through that, an inch or 2 below isn't going to really do anything. Yeah. But what they were supposed to do was to stop fragments, shrapnel, and other debris from punching too far down into the ship. So it's kind of like a spool liner on a tank, basically.
So as far as I can tell, the way the game is modelling it, we've got this new kind of this new view here. The kind of darker area here is where the game calculates the citadel to be.
Yeah.
So this is your main belt and main deck, and then these are inner layers. So I'm assuming they are, you know, 1 deck down, 2 decks down, 3 decks down from the main deck, which I believe the game just treats as just under the wooden deck, which I know isn't quite true, but I think that's how the game is handling it. I mean, you can now see the engine rooms as well. It's this kind of brighter colour here. So I think that's how it's kind of dealing with it. So this is your main deck here, and then then you've got your first, second, and third layers kind of underneath, and the same for the inner belts. So did Nelson have any layering of this type, or is it more something that came with later designs?
On the one hand, it's good that they've brought it in. It allows for much more detailed design. On the other hand, it makes it an absolute pain because you have different amounts of armor in different parts of the ship when it comes to the decks. So, you know, you might have an overall main armor deck thickness, but you might have either additional plating or thinner plating, and it can be obviously on multiple levels. So you might have an average deck layer, and then you might go, oh, well, actually, we're going to increase this over, say, the magazines, but it might also decrease over other areas. And as I said, you might have multiple layers on multiple decks as well. So it makes things a lot more complicated.
Yes. Yeah, that was my thought when I first started looking at it. And I was trying to work out what was going on.
Yeah. Especially when you take into account that on a number of different nation ships, the armor over the machinery is quite often different to the armor over the magazines, depending on how much value they placed on each. But obviously, for the purposes of the game, it treats the citadel, which is the magazines and the engine and the machinery, all as one area.
Yeah. So
at which point, I think, just to be fair, we'd err on the side of picking the highest.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, and we're going to be doing some doing some guesswork and averaging and kind of giving them their best shot with this.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing where exactly the description says each of these layers is.
So, I mean, it just says just behind the main belt there is an extra protective steel layer. and then
Yeah, so that was okay.
and then behind the first inner belt, and then a last resort, without detonating inside ammo rooms or engine rooms.
The thing that makes me a little bit cautious about it is if you go to the second inner belt, it says a protective steel deck. Now, is that
I think that's just a copy paste,
and
because they just haven't changed they haven't changed it from deck to bulkhead, I suppose.
Because I mean, it's a bit of a misnomer calling it inner belts. For the most part, there's a few weird and wonderful armor designs out there, but effectively they're talking about interior bulkheads, armored bulkheads, which again, to be fair, they do actually exist. It's just a slightly clumsy wording, and again, that is kind of in some ways similar to what we were just talking about with the deck armor, in that they would some ships would have an internal armored bulkhead that was designed to catch incoming splinters and stuff if the shell had hit the main belt and spooled something off, or had maybe barely made it through.
Yeah, the way these seem to work in game, although it's hard to tell, is that if you have a shell coming through your belt, these have a chance, depending on how much energy the shell has left, to either turn it from a penetrating hit into a partially penetrating hit, or just to reduce the amount of damage that you take, prevent you from... They do often seem to prevent you having the actual engine room being damaged. Even if it's still a penetrating hit, the actual engine room is still operational, and things like that. So that seems to be how it's kind of operating.
Yeah, I suspect we won't see quite too much use of it, but there'll be some of it on some designs.
Sure. So, what about Nelson? Did she have any of this going on at all?
Not particularly, no.
No.
It was just massive inclined outer belt armor. I mean, there'd be like an inch and a half inner bulkhead because of the torpedo defense system. So I guess you could put the first inner belt to like an inch and a half or something. But nothing really much beyond that.
Say just like... I mean, how thick were the bulkheads? Were they,
Well,
about...
you're basically not so much even talking about bulkheads per se as much as just inner walls. So it was like half inch or something like that.
Half an inch, okay.
So
something like that.
At that point, you're basically just talking about the generic dividers between rooms.
Sure.
Steel plate.
So I think that would probably be okay. Just so a splinter protection in a bulkhead, and then just pretty much regular bulkheads on the second and third. And then were the decks kind of the same deal, or did she have more of a protection? I know it's technically against bombs, which aren't a thing in Ultimate Admiral at the moment, but
yeah, I mean, this is the same thing we have with using like secondary guns as anti-aircraft protection.
Yeah.
Because they're there historically, but the game doesn't have any aircraft, so it doesn't have any particular propensity to design things as AA protection. Now I have to pull out, try to find some more detailed specs for the Nelsons.
I think the rest of the ship is exactly as we had it before. She is a little bit lighter because of the new weight mechanics. So her small, she does have a small citadel because of her layout.
Yes.
Has reduced her weight a little bit. So I was just waiting until we did the armor, and then I'm going to reduce the slider a bit and see how light we can get her.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is again that Nelson has different layers of armor at different places. So in some areas, she's just got standard, your standard one-piece thickness armor, but then over the boiler rooms, she's got.
I think we should.
Two layers of armor, and then over the stern, she's got a different layer of armor.
I think if we just have a general rule that we just take whatever the best, or or an average, depending on if neither's like the best, then a bit particularly because I think this is supposed to represent protection over the magazines or machinery.
But then that's also the main deck, isn't it? Because this is the internal stuff. So yeah, I'd be tempted to just go kind of similar to what we've done with.
So like
with the belt, just unless it's otherwise noted in the records as having particular things, we're just basically doing a splinter catcher and then representing the thickness of metal that would just be in the way from being floors and walls and ceilings.
Yeah, so I think for this division, unless otherwise noted, we'll do this protection scheme.
Yeah.
Because I think they're all. Well, there might be a difference if there's a turtleback ship or something, but the all or nothing ships will all be like that. Right. Yeah. Let's see if we can slim her down a little bit. Right about there, I think. I've gone too far. There we go. 41,686 tons, which I don't think is too far off. Sounds about right to me.
It's a little high for her at full load, but how much she weighed fully loaded by the end of the war is another matter.
True enough,
because a lot of ships picked up 2,000 or 3,000 tons or so between their launch and 1945. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're not just here to talk about Nelson, of course, because this is more so we can talk about general things that are going to be throughout the division. As the winner of Division 3, she moves up, but we're going to build the first competitor for Division 2. So, what ship is that going to be?
We're going to go. I think we're going to do our 2 quad-turreted ships today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start with King George V.
Excellent.
Get the other British design out there.
So I think it's the modern Battleship 1 hull for KG5. I think that's
get it far enough down the scale. Yeah,
I think that's pretty close. So what was her displacement first of all, or we could go for beam as well, perhaps, because this does now. Well, it only updates if you increase it. But what was her kind of?
So her beam is 103 foot.
Okay, so she's probably a little bit under in that case. So 113 is plus 2.5. So if you just go minus, that'll be about 103, even if the game isn't saying it.
Just
okay.
And then she's at the. What's the length defined as? Is it overall length or waterline length?
I'm not sure actually.
Well, let's go with overall length just in case. Okay. And that's 745 foot.
Okay, so the smallest we can get her is 781. Because this just comes in size blocks like that.
Okay. And we established that that the displacement it uses is fully loaded displacement, isn't it?
Yeah, we have, yeah.
So at that point, if we set the displacement slider for 45,000 tons and see what it gives us.
So it's a little bit above minimum displacement.
Are they measuring in long tons or standard tons? Because that's going to make a difference.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, let's go with standard tons. Displacement ton?
They don't say.
Okay.
Devs, if you're watching, are you using normal tons or are you using long tons?
Okay, we'll put her at 45,500 because then that splits the difference between long tons and standard tons. Let's see what that gives us.
45.
So we can't change the overall length otherwise, can we? So
No. I almost had it as well.
close enough.
There we go. 45,499 maximum.
Close enough. So right, so she's a little bit longer than historical, but probably close enough.
Okay.
So speed.
Yep.
We want her to be able to manage. Well, depends exactly which ship we want to model, but at their fastest, they could get up to 28 knots.
Okay. I think we'll go for the. We'll err on the side of generousness. I think with these ships, I think that's fair enough. Range we can come back to when we've got all the engines sorted. Yeah. What about bulkheads? Were they a heavily divided ship, or were they kind of normal for the time, or
pretty well subdivided? But for the time, so I'd go what's the step below maximum?
That's many, the same as
Many.
Nelson.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Okay, and then
the maximum for things like some of the really well built ships.
Sure, and I'm assuming she had a kind of standard crew quarters. All right, and then what kind of engines was she running?
Obviously, it's full fuel oil.
And then geared steam turbine?
Yep.
Presumably a balanced boiler. Did she carry an auxiliary diesel or batteries or something?
She had auxiliary diesel generators.
Mm-hmm. And then shaft 2, kind of, it's going to be a standard semi-balanced. And then
electro-hydraulic 1, probably.
1. Okay. Right. We have a choice of 4 towers. Mm-hmm. I think they are all pretty much identical. It's just how close the edge of the little secondary mounting comes to the edge of the hull, really. So it goes. This is the smallest one, and then this is the largest one where it's actually overhanging a little bit. So the 3 kind of just goes up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 2 gives you a little bit of a walkway, and then the 1 is, well, probably about 1 and a bit people wide. Something like that.
Okay, so the historically actually went right up to the very edge of the hull, so we might actually want 3.
Go for the 3 then.
Yeah.
Where there's just basically just that. Yeah, where it goes from the.
Yeah, because it was actually flush.
Yeah. Okay. And then the secondary tower was one of the ones with the aircraft, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
So and did it? Was the secondary barbette also flush on that one?
Yes. Yeah, because that's either end of the raised secondaries.
Okay, so I think that works pretty well then. All right, awesome.
To give us the space for a funnel forward and aft of the.
Yes. So she had 2 funnels, right?
Yes. Ideally, if they've got them, some relatively slimline versions, so kind of a lot longer than they are wide.
We have ones like this, which have a kind of, I don't know what these would be, spotting platforms or something at the back.
A bit chunky.
And then we have this one, which is more straight up and down, doesn't have any balconies or anything. Yeah. I'm sure they're not called balconies, but
yeah, and then probably that looks a bit more like it.
Okay. And then
if we've got a balcony one that's about the same size, we can put that on as the aft one.
What was this? The 10? So 2 10s. Unfortunately, I think they're on a step, which is annoying. This is not as high, which I don't think is right. We could maybe do it with something like that.
Yeah, do that.
Maybe the next one up. No, this one.
Yeah, that looks all right.
All right.
I mean, the exact platform layout's not perfect, but the profile is a lot better.
Yeah, that looks about right to me as well. Okay, and then what did she have in terms of guns?
Right, so she has 10 14-inch guns, but laid out in the slightly odd layout of a quad forward with a twin super firing, and then a quad aft as well.
Yeah. Now I'll add those guns in a minute. We could because there's a bit of a it might just be my copy actually. I can only actually see the length of the guns when there's only one fitted.
I wish they had 54 caliber.
So were they weren't 54 caliber. I know they weren't that long. So how long were the guns?
They're standard 45 caliber.
Okay, 45. Should be able to get them down to 45. This might be an issue with some of the other ships, but hopefully not. Sometimes I think the guns, the default lengths in the game are a little bit too long. But yes, we'll go down to the 45, and then what kind of shape was the barbette? Was it kind of a sitting perfectly on top, or was it going
near enough
inwards?
Slight, twin.
Twin one. Sorry, 14 should be the right size. It's gone down to a 44 for some reason. Make it slightly. Why is it doing that?
That barbette looks just. The annoying thing is that the barbette itself is actually fine, and then it's got this weird little cap on it, which makes it
not look right.
Flare out, which is too wide.
The standard. We could maybe try a medium might actually fit. No.
Can we drop it on and get the flipping turret ring? That's the problem. It's the barbette. The barbette is actually the barbette doesn't have the ring, but you drop the.
How about that?
And yeah, close enough.
Close enough.
It's a fraction too big, but yeah, whatever.
And I'm assuming the B turret here was right up against the superstructure.
They've spread those twin guns out.
I know they're quite wide set, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh well. At least the overall appearance is actually pretty much the overall appearance and design of these turrets is pretty much spot on for the King George V. So there's that at least.
Okay, and then how about secondary armament?
Right, so we have 8 twin 5.25s.
Okay.
So you want one on each of those, and then one immediately forward and one aft, if we can fit it.
One here.
Yeah.
And one here.
There we go.
Okay, and how?
That's absolutely perfect.
And then the game's put these down as 45s as well. I don't know how that compares lengthwise. It doesn't matter as much with the secondaries, of course, but.
So the 5.25s are 50 cals.
Okay, so they could be a little bit longer then. 47, 49. And I've asked many times for this to be changed to an actual caliber number rather than a percentage, but hopefully they'll hear my pleas. Anyway, I've called them 5.3 and then 50 cals, and then presumably she had some AA guns of some sort.
Yes, though exactly what AA fit we want to give. I mean, obviously it doesn't make too much odds for the actual battle she'll be fighting, but she had a lot of octuple pom-poms.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't replicate those.
Barrel ones.
No, sadly. The most we can do is 3 barrels.
I think I'll probably do twins to maybe represent the represent Bofors.
Sure.
If we do twins to represent 40mm Bofors, that'll probably work out better, because then that's kind of a late war thing, and we don't have to worry about coming up with octuple mountains.
So is that a 1.6?
Yeah, roughly.
40, something like that.
If we're going with the Bofors, I think they're L60s actually. Yeah, 60 caliber.
See if I can get them that long. 42. That's disappointing.
Is that the maximum?
Yeah, that's all it'll let me go up to.
Oh well.
But
Oh well.
It'll do. And how many of those did just a scattering? Is it?
Yeah, just scatter them around the superstructure. By the late war, she's got, like the King George V had well over 100 20 and 40 mil barrels of varying descriptions aboard, so can't go wrong with a little hail of fire approach.
Can even fit some down there.
Yeah, because we're not launching scout aircraft.
Well, I think technically they're under the launcher, but
yeah,
I don't think that would be the most pleasant place to be if they were launching an aircraft.
No. But then again, it's not letting us do turret mounts, so
no, that gives us
historically she had some octuple pom poms on the on the super firing turret and the aft turret.
Well, it gives us 29 of those twin Bofors. So
yeah, so something.
Yeah, it's certainly if she was coming up against destroyers in game, that would be an awful lot of firepower.
Yes.
So it's certainly not nothing.
No.
Okay, and what about protection? So what kind of
She has the
she
best
running?
quality armor, so Crumb 4.
Yeah, she's going to be one of the very few ships.
That, the German and British battleships will be the only ones to share that particular armor quality.
Mm-hmm. And Barbette has now been renamed to anti-flash protection.
Anti-flash 4 then, because Barbette 4, because King George V were absolutely paranoid about anti-flash to the point that it was actually a bit of detriment to.
Can't imagine why.
It's actually funny enough, with a lot of the jams that are reported in Prince of Wales at the Battle of Denmark Strait, it's not that the guns themselves have stopped working. For the most part, it's actually the anti-flash systems. Their tolerances were so tight that when it was powering at speed through high seas like Denmark Strait, the ship's hull, the very minute flexings you got within the ship's hull within the barbette, because obviously the hull itself will flex a bit more than the interior of the barbette and shell hoist systems, but even those tiny minute flexings inside were enough that it was actually everything was jamming up because the tolerances on the anti-flash were so tight.
Oh my goodness. And then, what about our anti-torpedo protection? Now, I know they did, I mean, obviously one KG-5 was lost to kind of torpedo attack, but it was a fairly well-guarded system, I believe.
Yeah, it was actually a very well-built system, so I'm going to say go with, what's it, up to 6? So
5 is the highest.
5. Okay, go with 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because the actual torpedo protection system itself was one of, if not the highest rated systems of the treaty era. It was designed to withstand a 1,000-pound warhead, which was actually more than, say, an Iowa class is designed to withstand. But if you actually hit the system, it works really well. And as Prince of Wales' rec has shown, the one Japanese torpedo that actually hit the system was completely stopped cold, despite the significant power of the torpedo. But when you hit outside the torpedo system, other things go horribly wrong. So I'm just deducting a mark for that.
And then presumably she had a double bottom hull. What about her her bulkhead protection?
I say she has reinforced bulkheads and watertight doors.
Okay.
I love the way the watertight doors are somehow only a Type 2 upgrade.
Well, this is available quite early, I think.
Yeah.
And then her anti-flooding system?
Probably about a 2. It was better than some, not as good as others.
All right. And then presumably she's an all or nothing ship. Yeah. Okay. Shells next.
So we're going to go with a balance towards AP.
Mm-hmm.
HE on the secondaries.
Sure. And then base fuse, presumably?
Base fuse for the secondaries, yeah.
And then I'm assuming either cap ballistic 1 or 2.
Yes, although I'd be interested to see what that does to the shell weights.
Should we go for 2? Did she have
go with capped for the start, and then we'll see.
Just regular capped.
Go for regular capped, and then we'll see what what
Okay.
we can, if anything, change.
With it, we'll come back to shell size in a minute.
Yeah.
Presumably she used cordite
3,
and picric.
Pickrick 3, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then turret mechanism. Hydraulic and advanced hydraulic are now considered obsolete by the game. So we really only have either purely electrical or electrohydro as options.
So I'd go with Electrohydro 1.
And then reloading. What did she have in reality? And then we can adjust for rate of fire later.
Well, it would be enhanced, but her rate of fire is supposed to be 2 rounds per minute, i.e. 1 round every 30 seconds.
So we'll have a look at what the gun is reporting. So currently rate of fire is 2.2 rounds a minute.
A little bit quicker.
Firing a 1,203 kilogram quote unquote shell, but it's not, of course. That's the charge as well. At 613 meters per second.
Okay, so her APC shell is the APC shell itself is 721 kilos, and the propellant charge is 153. So it should be about 885, 890. Shell weight
874, which is way less. So we can fiddle around with this. I wonder if it probably makes it worse if we go for Cat Ballistic 2, doesn't it? Yeah. 1285, 1203. You could go down to standard, but that doesn't seem quite right.
No.
You'd have to be going
Be at
for
least cap.
Yeah, so you'd have to be changing something over here.
Change to light shells, maybe?
Light shells, 928
Getting into the
kilos, getting closer. Could potentially change this. The picric does increase the weight, but that is what she used, so...
What are our other options?
Dunite or TNT of various types.
What do they do for shell weight?
They...
Picric.
I think they don't... So they'll reduce it compared to picric. Yeah, there we go. Shell weight now is 855, which is actually a bit under.
Fraction light.
TNT 3 is the same. Yeah, I think all of them are just going to be... Oh no, TNT 2 is even lighter than that. But yeah,
If we go with TNT 2 and put the shell size back to standard, what happens?
way back up. Well, a light. The other option is changing the propellant as well, but I don't think that changes shell weight too much, because that will be changing the actual weight of the charge. But I don't think they have a shell weight modifier. Oh no, they do. Tube powder increases it. The tube powder 3 increases the shell weight, and so does 2. And cordite 3 does increase the shell weight, 22.5. Triple base is only 10.5. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because we can change both. We can change the weight of the propellant and the shell itself, but we can't tell quite what we're doing directly.
I'd be tempted to stick with picric, and then try and maybe switch the propellant around a little bit.
Okay.
If there's any propellant that reduces weight.
Well, triple base will be slightly lighter. That gives us 819 kilograms. And I think that's the closest to cordite.
Yeah. Well, let's go with that and see what happens.
All right.
Reload time's okay. Rate of fire's a little bit fast, but it's not too bad. Muzzle velocity is a bit low. Actually, muzzle velocity is quite low.
Okay.
I'm not so sure I'm happy about that.
The only way we could get that up would be going with something like chew powder, but it doesn't increase it that as much as I was thinking. Yeah, 613. No, it's the same.
And what happens if we go back to cordite?
Same. It'll be the length of the gun. The game is mumbling about. So I think we could either increase the length of the gun to get the correct stats, or we can keep the length of the gun historical.
I think if we keep, because the shell weight is a little bit over, but the muzzle the muzzle velocity is a bit under, so that approximately should balance out. I mean, it's not going to be exact because obviously kinetic energy is mv squared, but mind you, we've got the penetration table there, haven't we? So what's our penetration looking like?
So the pen tables for this are a little bit off. Because they use the game basically considered it firing against regular old iron plate. But if you think about firing at against their own ship, that would be divided by 2.4. So what range would you like to
So it's
look
going
at?
up in fragments. So it's going up in what? 2,500, 2,500, 5,000. So it's going up in 2,500 meter increments.
Yeah.
So at a realistic engagement range, what have we got that's closest? So what's it got at 22,500? Because we've got a figure here for 22,860, which might as well be the same. That's actually further than it goes.
Further than the table goes, annoyingly.
Okay, let's try for 15,000 meters.
Okay, so it's saying 20.1 inch effective, which against the KG5's type of armor would be 8 inches of pen. Or 8.4.
Yeah, which is way too low. Because it should be around, depending on whose figures you believe, it should be somewhere around 13 inches.
Okay, so 13 would be an effective pen of about 31, according to the game. So yeah, we're about 11 inches low on the pen, and I think it's due to the length.
Although I suppose that is against KGV's own armor, which is
it is very good,
than average. So
I mean, if you look at most ships, if you let the AI generate it, it'll probably come out with about 100% armor bonus. So if you just divide all the numbers by 2, it gives you roughly what you're going through. So, but it's still only about 10 inches.
Which is close to 13, and it's probably that's probably because of the significantly reduced muzzle velocity compared to historical. But
I'm just curious, if I put in the default length, then we get, so the shell weight is, I think, pretty much the same. Actually,
it's going to be the same.
Yeah, the shell weight's the same.
It won't change. Yeah, it shouldn't change that.
But we now have a muzzle velocity of 780 meters per second,
which is just fraction high, but much closer to.
Yeah, and our pen at 1500 is around about 12.5 inches.
So yeah, so that's actually giving us almost spot on. Not quite, but almost spot on to the capabilities of. That's giving us about just a fraction low, but otherwise good for the penetration capabilities of the actual historical guns.
Yeah, I think in that case, what we should maybe do is
with that. Then we just have would change the caliber length of the guns to give us the appropriate penetration figures, and then as long as we do that for every ship, we're being consistent.
Absolutely.
And what we did with the previous stuff doesn't matter because they're not in the league.
Exactly. It's one of the advantages of doing it in divisions is that we can kind of improve things as we go. And change things as we go.
At some point have to revisit Nelson to make sure that she's okay.
Yeah, we'll maybe pop back at the end of the episode and check on her guns. What about rate of fire? Rate of fire's actually dropped a little bit to 1.74.
Which, weirdly enough, is almost exactly what she managed in service.
We'll leave it on enhanced then. 1.74 then. Sounds good to me. It's firing every 34.4 seconds. The dual turret will have completely different numbers, but that's just the game being that's just the game being annoying. We won't look at that. What about rangefinder? What was she carrying in terms of
Coincidence 5.
Very nice. Presumably she did have a hydrophone.
Yep. Not that makes much of.
No, it doesn't make much difference.
RDF and Gen 2 radar.
Gen 2 radar, okay. We do have 3 now, but...
Yeah. But she had the latest and greatest gunnery control radar by the end, so you might as well go with that.
Give her the Gen 3, alright. Now, I'm sure KG5 wished she had this arm scheme that the game has generated.
Yes, unfortunately not. So... yeah, main belt is, well, either 14.7 or 15 inches, depending on who you believe. Let's just go with 15.
Mm-hmm.
There's basically this whole debate over rule of thumb versus actual weight of armour. But because in theory, if I remember, it's like the British measured their armour in pounds per square foot. So a 40-pound plate was 1 inch.
Lovely.
And so it would be ordered in pounds per square foot, but of course the density of steel means that it's actually a little bit heavier than that per square inch, which then I say that leads to all sorts of interesting debates online as to whether the armor is 15 inches, which is specified in some documents, or 14.7 inches, which is the poundage equivalent specified in other documents. But when I dug a little bit deeper into that and I looked at the armor values for the armor thickness coming out of various forges in the UK and the USA and so forth, 0.3 of an inch is at that scale is actually well within the margin of error for the castings.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, we're just going to go with 15. And
I think benefit of the doubt as we have been kind of doing
as long
throughout.
As long as we're giving benefit of the doubt to everyone, it's still fair.
Exactly.
So, fore and aft belt, again, we're just going with 1.5 splinter.
Okay.
Deck, again, she wishes she had 10 and a bit inches of deck armor. 6 inches.
Yeah.
And then we'll go, again, with splinter stuff fore and aft, which is what we've been doing with everyone.
And I'm assuming the same on the superstructure?
Yeah, basically the superstructure. Yeah. And the conning tower is only 4 inches thick, because conning towers are stupid.
Wasn't that something to do with the fact that so this is the conning tower here, right?
Well, it's theoretic on a British tower superstructure like that. It doesn't actually exist. It's usually a little dustbin type thing forward of the bridge.
Oh, it's kind of here.
Yeah.
Wasn't it something to do with the fact that the officers would never go in it? They would always go up to this bit up here.
They'd always just go to the area they had the best view, because most British officers had the view that it was better to put yourself at risk in an area where you were minimally likely to be hit, but have a much better view of the situation, which made you more likely to hit your opponent than to hide away in an armoured dustbin that would kill you anyway when it got hit and not be able to see anything.
Makes sense. And then we've got our layering system here. Are we kind of just going to go? Well, she didn't really have a layering, or did she?
She actually does have a 1 3/4 inch inner belt. She is actually one of the ships that has that feature.
Call it 1.8.
Yeah.
And
then just a 1.5 for there, and a 1.5 for the last one. So second inner belt, should be a 0.5.
The game is weird. It won't let you.
Okay.
These values are set by this one.
Make it 0.6 for the second inner belt, because the second inner belt's just representing walls. So 0.6 on there.
And that'll change the third inner one as well.
Oh, Right. Okay. Because she does have an 1.5-inch splinter protection around the magazine, separate to all the other, which is what I was trying to represent at the end. So increase the second inner belt until collectively the second and third inner belt adds up to about 2 inches.
Okay.
That'll do.
And then what about the decks? Because KG5, I know, had a slightly unusual deck armament layout, didn't she?
Yeah, so we've got 6 inches as our maximum main deck thickness. We've got a 1-inch burster deck up top.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be I guess the first inner deck equivalent.
Yeah.
And then that's basically, and then it's just 0.5s.
Yeah.
Deck basically
Go for a 0.6 and a 0.5, something like that, or it'll go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, because then that's just representing a couple of deck actual deck floors that are lying between her main deck and the important bits.
Okay, and what about her turrets?
Okay, so turrets we are looking at just under 13 inches, so that's 12.8 on the front.
Mm-hmm.
That's the armor belt. Right, so yeah, 12.8 on the front, 8.8 at the sides, and 6.8 on. 8.8 at the sides and 5.9 on the roof.
5.9, and what about her barbette?
The barbettes are 12.75 as well, or 12.8.
12.8. Okay, very nice. And then her 5-inch secondaries, or the 5.25s?
Okay, 5.25-inch mounts. They're relatively lightly protected, if I remember correctly.
Probably just going to be about an inch or something, isn't it?
I think they had a bit more than that. A second.
I'm just going to start trying to balance the ship.
Yeah, probably good idea.
Because she's got a bit of an half-weight offset issue right now.
Okay, so the armor of the 5.25-inch guns is 2.5 inches all around.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's their barbette as well.
No, the barbette's actually up to 6 inches thick, believe it or not.
Wow. Oh, the game won't let me do that. Shame.
Game over.
I'm just trying to get the balance right. That's more like it. And then the 1.6-inch gun, it's not letting me put any armor on those. So
well, it doesn't matter.
And there we go. That's her pretty much balanced, and she's coming in underweight.
Just about. Only a fraction. So range, which we were going to come back to, is 15,600 nautical miles, which is what we're in kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 28,900 kilometers.
Wow. Okay, we're not going to be able to get that in.
Yes.
We get 15. We'll just scribble that out.
Fair
put
enough.
miles.
Put
an N instead of a K. And I think we're good. Well.
And she actually looks incredibly like the actual ship.
I know. I'm really pleased with how she's come out. We'll have a look at her underway in a moment. But shall we just quickly hop back to Nelson and fix her guns? So, should we try and get the muzzle velocity about right? So, what was her AP muzzle velocity?
Nelson class. So, well, we're going to try and get the I think if we get the armor piercing value right, that would be better, because her muzzle velocity is about 790, give or take a bit. But so what have we got? Armor penetration. Yeah, I love the way the most of the game's armor pen values actually, only a few of them begin to line up with historical ones. Although this one goes out a bit further, so 22 500 ish.
Yep, we've got 16.9 effective,
which we said is probably about 8.
Yeah, about 8.5.
And we want that to be more like just over 10.
Okay.
We can make them 50 cal.
Yeah, we could try making them 50s. Don't worry about them getting out of shape. We can fix that. So at 50, that gives us 17.9, which is more like 9 inches of pen.
So getting there.
Can make them maybe all go all the way up to 55s. That's pretty extreme, but it's not too far off the 54s that the KG5 has.
Let's see what that gives us.
So 22, that's 20.2. So yeah, 10.1 inches effective.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much.
Yeah,
that's pretty much on there.
Okay, so I'll just shift the guns about a bit. It still has an half weight offset. This ship somehow. They do look a bit. They do look a bit comical.
Yes,
but they are giving the right kind of numbers. Yeah, muzzle velocity not too far off, 822. It's only a little bit faster.
A little bit faster. What's the shell weight?
1375.
Yeah, that's way over. Yeah, which is why it's needing the slightly greater muzzle velocity to kick out for that level of.
What about rate of fire? Because that has now changed. It's giving
we should be looking about 1.5.
Okay, so it's currently giving us 1.1.
So we need to increase the.
It can go all the way up to auto 2. That gives us 1.38 rounds a minute.
Well, if that's the closest we're going to get, that's the closest we're going to get, isn't it?
Then I'm just going to. Should be able to get her just a bit more weight. No, not quite.
Well, we're only 1% overweight though at that point.
Yeah.
Can we give her a fraction more beam? Will that help? Does beam increase weight?
It can help. Yes, there we go. There you go.
Yeah, a bit chunky now, but
a bit chunky, but you know,
horribly abusing the poor thing to make it fit to make it vaguely realistic, which is a bit odd considering that the KGV's worked out actually very well for us. Never mind.
Yeah, let's go back to this one.
It looks
that looks a lot nicer. I'll take her out for. We'll take her out for a quick spin. Yeah, I think the game is continuing to improve in terms of how you can do historical ships. But I think for me, when I've been trying to kind of match up gun lengths, the game's default length is usually a little bit too long, especially with the later guns. But no, I think it's certainly a nice feature to have. I think that just generally you can get some stupidly long guns that maybe aren't quite right. Is the game actually going to load up the thing? I don't know. So thank you very much for helping build KG5. Next time we are going to be doing Richelieu, so keep an eye out for that one. But thank you very much for watching, and don't worry, I'll get some pretty screenshots. Oh no, see, every time I talk trash about the game, it then actually loads up. What is that? Oh my goodness. But yes, here we are, KG5 underway, nice and grey skies. She does look right.
Very British weather.
Yeah, very. But yeah, I think she looks fantastic. Anyway, thank you very much, and thank you all very much for watching, and see you again soon for some more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Bye for now.
Yeah.